very special and exclusive 7investing podcast where we're going to be doing a deep dive into Rocket Lab, one of the most exciting stocks and investment opportunities in the entire market today. Before we get started, I'd like to welcome everyone to the live stream format of this podcast filming. We are going to publish it out to the 7investing podcast. We've got it in live stream, so if you would like to speak into the chat, we have the live chat enabled over there on the right-hand sidebar. Thank you, Jacob. We're already saying, let's go. I'm ready to get lifted off. I'm ready to get pumped up. I think this is going to be a fantastic event, and I'm very much looking forward to it. We're going to have first of all, a deep dive presentation on Rocket Lab, the stock, first and foremost. I know that a lot of people in the audience love this company. I've followed it for a long time. We're going to be discussing that first and foremost. In the middle, we'll have a short break. We're going to have actually a special guest and a sponsor come up and talk for a couple of minutes while I grab a coffee and a water and catch my breath. And in the second part, after we introduce Rocket Lab and talk about it as an opportunity, we're going to talk a little bit about the valuation and what actually a purchase price might make sense for someone investing in the stock today. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll go ahead and share my screen here. We are broadcasting this live to X and Twitter. We are live streaming it to YouTube. And as we said, we're going to post it to the 7investing podcast. And so right before we do get started, hopefully everyone can see the screen now about Rocket Lab. We're going to format this in a 7investing style, just like we would do for a real recommendation of 7investing. And so what that means is we are not just fair weather fans here. We're not just jumping on the bandwagon and recommending Rocket Lab because everyone else seems to be talking about it now. We've got a track record to back this up. We've actually put 7investing has put Rocket Lab on our actual scorecard 4 different times, going all the way back to August of 2021, which if you remember the story, that's exactly the first month you could invest in this company right after it completed its SPAC IPO. All of them have done very, very well. We've gotten in at prices that are far below where they are today. I even convinced my own father to purchase a whole bunch of shares and was selling for less than $5 a share. This is something that we followed very closely for several years. We've got skin in the game and we know it pretty well, and we're getting to know it even better each and every year. So thank you for attending this live stream. If you do want to go see the actual recommendation reports that 7investing has put together for Rocket Lab, you can always go check out 7investing.com/subscribe. Your first week is entirely free. So go check out all the premium content we've got, including all those Rocket Lab recommendations. And by the way, we do still refer to it as a best buy in terms of current conviction rating. And so jumping in, we're going to start the presentation in just a moment. Before we do, I'm anticipating there will be at least one question that will come up saying, hey, how can we get this presentation emailed to us? Hey, can I get a copy of it? Hey, I'd like to review some of the things you were talking about. Easy breezy to do this. 2 simple steps. Go to 7investing.com/newsletter. Easy to remember URL there, and just put in your first name and your email address. First thing tomorrow morning, we'll give you a copy of this presentation on Rocket Lab. So before we jump in, I might give 60 seconds for the room to fill up, and we'll get started in a moment. In the meantime, if you do want to go, just so you don't forget, to 7investing.com/newsletter, fill out your name and your email address. I'll make sure that I'll send you a copy of this first thing tomorrow morning. And we are go for launch in T-5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's jump into the Rocket Lab deep dive here today. And again, this is 7investing recommendation format. You can see all of our recommendations outside of Rocket Lab included at 7investing.com. So what does Rocket Lab do? Definitionally, it's a small launch provider who aspires to become an end-to-end partner that enables the space-based operations. In other words, its mission is to go to space to improve life back on Earth. It was founded back, almost 20 years ago, June 2006, by Sir Peter Beck, a New Zealander, a Kiwi, who was very obsessed with building rockets ever since a very young age. It had some very prominent early investors, including Mark Stevens, who changed his middle name to Rocket, Mark Rocket Stevens, Khosla Ventures, a prominent venture and capital investor, and Bessemer Venture Partners, who has been very actively involved in investing in space-based companies. So a great pedigree of some early investors that were on board. Its operations were based originally in New Zealand, set up a shop in the United States, headquarters in Long Beach, California. And to date, it's had 59 successful launches since 2015, which is triple the number of all other American small launch providers combined. And so the vision of what Rocket Lab really wants to do started with being a small satellite launch vendor, as you kind of see at the bottom of this slide, and it wants to make larger rockets to carry larger payloads into outer space. But it doesn't just want to be carrying other people's payloads, it wants to be manufacturing and creating the satellites and their components themselves. And so it's added on another group called Space Systems in complement to its launch trajectory, in complement to the launch business that already has. It wants to do a lot of manufacturing as well as it's sending these satellites up and out into space. And then it wants to, in the nearer term, as it kind of builds out this end-to-end business, it wants to build upon the rockets that it's creating, build upon the rockets it's creating, build upon the satellites it's manufacturing, and then use larger rockets and then its own kind of capabilities to put entire constellations out into outer space. Now, why does it want to do that? First of all, let's go back in time a little bit. Let's go back to August of 2021. This is when Rocket Lab completed its SPAC merger. It now is a publicly traded company. It raised $777 million. In fact, for people who remember the SPAC craze, we were jokingly calling this the SPACs craze, the SPAC-E craze, because it seemed like every space economy company was raising money at ridiculous valuations. And so there was actually a lot of skepticism in Rocket Lab early on. Right as it hits the public markets, it's come out there and said, hey, we've got an addressable market of $350 billion, and we think that's going to grow to $1.4 trillion by the year 2030. And we've kind of got this sub-segmented into launch, into space systems, and into space applications. And for those who remember the prospectus, right out of the gate in 2021, in the summertime, it looked like this. Here we were in 2021, $69 million of total revenue, saying that's going to have $1.5 billion by the year 2027. A very conservative 22 times revenue growth within just a 6-year period. And so a lot of people were raising eyebrows, looking at Rocket Lab and looking at just the space economy as a whole and saying, is it actually going to be able to fulfill on these promises now that it's a publicly traded company? It kept a lot of investors on the sidelines. They just didn't want to participate because of that hockey stick in growth. And here we are 4 years later. This is impressive to me. If you actually look at what Rocket Lab has done, and this is a company that does what it says it's going to do, kind of an unofficial slogan of the company itself, it has hit its own guidance from 4 years ago. It comes out there and says, hey, we're going to increase our revenue by 22x in 6 years. When you look at kind of between 2024 and 2025 here, it's expecting between 450 and $747 million. Here we are trailing 12 months as of today at $466 million of trailing revenues. It's done exactly what it said it's going to do. That is impressive. And hardly any other of those SPAC companies have hit those hockey stick projections quite as well as Rocket Lab has. So check, green check. Did what you said you're going to do. Great job. But let's look at the space economy at a higher level. Higher altitude, I should say. Try to get in as many space-related puns as I possibly can. But basically, the launch business was putting satellites out into orbit. And Rocket Lab's Electron was originally meant to carry payloads of up to 300 kilograms, right? It's the size of a vending machine. These were kind of smaller launches for customers that wanted to get into outer space and had no other way to do so. In fact, if you look at kind of the last 5 or 6 decades down there, this was typically just a US and Russia phenomenon of even placing satellites into outer space, right? Fantastic that you're starting to see other countries, whether that be China, whether that be India, whether that be other countries from Europe, getting into outer space, which is going to be very interesting to see the rest of the globe catching on to something that previously just wasn't accessible for a lot of businesses. But look at this. As of March 1st, 2025, there are 11,813 active satellites in orbit around the Earth right now. That's a lot, right? And that's something that has really doubled since 5,000 active satellites at the end of 2021. And so you kind of see, again, that kind of S curve, that hockey stick. There was a point of inflection right now for the number of satellites that are actually orbiting in Earth over the last several years. But it's going to get even better than this, right? If we're at 11,813 today, we're going to be having several more than those, orders of magnitude more than those in the near future. In fact, 40,000 applications are being reviewed by the FCC right now just for spectrum from commercial companies that want to go into outer space. They want to set up shop. They're ready to send their satellite out there. Just like a cell phone is going to have spectrum so you don't interfere with communications, Satellites have to have the same thing. There's 40,000 applications already out there. So who wants to go to satellite? Who wants to go to outer space right now and send their satellites out there? Well, unsurprisingly, SpaceX and Starlink is one of the largest satellite launches out there. Elon is launching his own satellites out there. But then also a lot of telecommunication companies, right? When you look at OneWeb, Telesat, Viasat, a lot of these are telecommunications companies that want to have broadband internet, as one example. Amazon Project Kuiper has already got a lot of satellites approved. Astrolabs, Boeing, a lot of different commercial customers are starting to understand what can we do in outer space and who's going to be the company that's going to get there. In fact, one of the early opportunities as far as an addressable market has been satellite internet. We've gotten so used to setting up these terrestrial, whether it be fiber or whether it be towers or anything else like that for telecommunications, whether that be fast, wireless internet that's broadband, whether that be cellular networks that are very, very fast. What if we could bring that to a higher altitude and actually use satellites for a lot of those transmissions for telecommunications? And so if you look at the research kind of done by Citigroup, by Bank of America, by Morgan Stanley, even just a couple of years ago, they were already predicting, this is going to be something that's growing from basically a market that didn't exist a decade ago to being worth more than $400 billion by the year 2040. This is kind of the biggest leap of getting the satellite economy, the space economy, to over $1 trillion by the year 2040. AST Space Mobile, great point here, Jacob, is also a good one that's kind of using it for cellular applications, right? Can you actually use your cell phone anywhere on the earth and keep your existing wireless carrier, but use a satellite to do the transmissions? But so back to these 40,000 applications for Spectrum. Rocket Lab initially created its business to get those satellites into outer space. And Electron was a small launch provider to meet the demand out there. Started in New Zealand first and foremost. They built another facility, another space launch pad right off the coast of Virginia. Has expanded internationally, but is really meant to be a small launch provider. And even better than getting the satellites up there, they've gotten better over time at recovering the rockets and making them more and more reusable. I mean, here's from November of 2020, the first time they actually brought an Electron rocket back for an ocean landing, reused several of the components and the rocket for a future mission. I joke and love this comment from Peter Beck announcing it on X, got purchased by Elon Musk, who has his own space company, saying well done to Peter Beck on his own platform. 2 thumbs up. When you get a 2 thumbs up from Elon, it tends to be a good sign. And then in April 2022, of course, they do a helicopter recovery of one of the rockets. It didn't actually work out. There was some issues with the weight bearings at this time, but just another way that you can get recovery of components of the rockets out there. Fantastic. SpaceX merger with Rocket Lab, man, we might see that. SpaceX has certainly got the money to do it. Rocket Lab's sporting a $10 billion valuation right now. Certainly digestible for a company like SpaceX, but we'll see. I think it's going to be swim lanes. They're going to go after different customers for at least a while here. And so Peter Beck eats his hat. He says, we're never going to have a reusable, recoverable rocket. I'll eat my hat if we ever do. And so he comes out there, does a great publicity thing for the media, and he actually puts his hat in a blender, spit it out immediately afterward. It wasn't very tasty, but kind of showing that this company is going to do a lot of things that it didn't initially think it was going to be able to do, and it's doing them credibly and reliably. And so check this out, just the improvements of the business. Rockets are expensive to build, but if you're reusing them, you're reducing your costs of build. And the operations, of course, a lot of fixed costs, just getting everything on board, getting the right personnel, getting the right people, getting the right facilities. The costs of those come down over time. And then even the launches themselves, the cost per launching a rocket has decreased significantly, even within the last 3 years. Let's go back in time to 2022. There were 9 Electron launches that year. They captured an average of $6.7 million in revenue per launch, but it was costing them $7.5 million just in gross losses, gross costs, not even the operational salaries, things like that, overhead, but just every time they launched, it cost them $7.5 million. And so you're actually losing money every time you send a rocket up in outer space. And this was a year after the SPAC, right? A lot of people were staying on the sidelines saying, hey, this company's not making any money, questionable whether it's going to be reusable or not. There was just a lot of skepticism for Rocket Lab. But look at this improvement over time. 2023, the very next year, increase the number of Electron launches to 10, increase the revenue per launch because they're carrying larger payloads to $7.2 million per launch, decreased the cost per launch from 7.5 million to $7 million, and all of a sudden turning to positive on a gross margin perspective, 11% gross margin. Fast forward to 2024, last year, 16 Electron launches. Actually had a fully booked schedule that a couple customers pushed them out. It was actually closer to 22 for the year. They ended up launching 16 during 2024. Increased the revenue per launch again, $7.8 million in sales and revenue per launch. Decreased the cost per launch down to 5.7 million. And all of a sudden, we're at a 27% gross margin. You see the scalability of it himself, of Rocket Lab itself, improving over time. The margin profile is improving with the reusability, with the spreading out of the fixed costs and the operating line items. This is a more improved economics for the business that's getting better and better over time. And of course, those who love Peter Beck and the character that he is, comes out and he says, hey, we're going to build a bigger rocket now. We've been carrying 300 kilogram payloads into space. Let's go after the big mama constellations that will carry initially 8,000 kilograms, 8-ton payloads into outer space. If you go into low Earth orbits, even double that, up to 15,000 kilograms for entire satellite constellations. And so now, rather than just placing a single satellite that's 300 kilograms, or a couple of satellites that together are worth 300 or weigh 300 kilograms, let's place an entire constellation for these larger customers to launch once and get everything on board the very, very all at the same time. And so I really think that Neutron is going to redefine this entire business. They got some early funding from some partners, and they're going to plan on launching a lot of these right off of Virginia's eastern coast. This was a big event that Neutron, a lot of people have said, hey, perhaps because we've gotten used to Elon, always push the timeline farther and farther out into the future with what he's done with Tesla and even with SpaceX. A lot of people were hesitant to think that Neutron would even be on schedule to have its maiden voyage and its inaugural launch in 2025. Thus far, it appears to have hit its own guidance. They've said over and over, there's a lot that goes into this. It's hard to get it exactly down to the day, but we still feel like late 2025, we're going to be on schedule for the very first launch. And in fact, those on Twitter or elsewhere that have kind of dug into the details in the trenches have confirmed that, yes, it does look like there's already been filings for a scheduled launch in September of 2025. And of course, Neutron, instead of having $7 or $8 million per launch, is on the order of magnitude of maybe $50 million per launch, because you're carrying such larger payloads. Vastly improved economies of scale for customers, vastly more revenue per launch for Rocket Lab. This is going to redefine the entire business and bring it into profitability. And so the growth trajectory, again, looking back, the footers at the bottom you see are from March of 2023, kind of compiled 2 years worth of knowledge from a lot of the deep dives we've done for 7investing. But where have we gone? This has been textbook disruption. It's been a lot of fun to watch. Kind of started with dedicated launches for very small customers. The government liked how quickly Rocket Lab could place a satellite or do a launch exactly where it wanted to in a very short window of time. And so they started giving them contracts based upon that. Now we've got a larger rocket that's about to get to the pad that's going to just completely rewrite the economics of this business and get even larger contracts, especially from the government and the Department of Defense. They've now introduced a new, more inexpensive and customizable flat-to-light, a satellite that has got kind of a platform for you to start building and incorporating more components into it for customers to let them do this. And then, overall, I think they're going to be doing a lot of the ongoing support and operations, especially for applications, right? Not only launching the satellites, not only building the satellites, but maintaining the comms, the communications, the software, making sure that there's uptime associated with them, analytics, things like this, just like what Amazon did for cloud computing when it laid the groundwork and the infrastructure. Now we're laying the orbital work, if we want to call it, for Rocket Lab's growth trajectory. And so again, going back to the original expectations when the company went public back in 2021, you can see that Rocket Lab has spent a lot of that capital that acquired when it went public into acquiring other companies and improving its own capabilities, right? Several of the acquisitions it made, even just within the first 6 months of going public out there, was to bring not only the capabilities of doing things that were related to like the solar arrays for power, the communications, the navigation, getting the satellites in exactly the right place you wanted to them, but also acquiring the right teams and bring them all into the same corporation. They can do a lot of neat things when they're under the same umbrella. And so, recent slide here, product expansion of Rocket Lab, the space systems group itself is able to do more and more things for a customer that calls up and says, hey, we want to get to outer space. Can you build us a satellite that's doing A, B, and C? Oh, and we also want D, E, and F. Rocket Lab has done a good job of going out there, acquiring companies to bring those in-house. And so great. Also, they're also planning another acquisition of Mynaric. This is a new company that's based in Europe, laser optical communication terminals. If it does close, it's pending review right now, but this will be kind of a nice foothold for Rocket Lab to set up shop in outer space as well, in Europe as well. So really cool to see Rocket Lab going out there, making some cool acquisitions, getting some new capabilities, adding new components to what they're able to offer for the satellites, and then doing this and bringing it in-house for the business itself. And so altogether, you've got a business here that's got over $1 billion of contracted backlog already in place as of the first quarter of 2025. We're going to talk about those contracts in just a minute, but you can kind of see the split between space systems, 60% of the backlog, and then the launch, the future launches of those satellites, 40% of the business. This is a lot more than just the day of launch. There's a lot of work that goes in to the building of the satellites, the personnel that's required, a lot of the manufacturing capabilities, and it's driven by these large contracts. And so I want to talk about those just a moment, about these large deals we've been seeing for the last several years. One of the first ones was back in February 2022. A company called Globalstar had contracted out with MDA Space to build 17 satellites, for its constellations that it'd be using for telecommunication purposes. And so it went out there and came to Rocket Lab and they said, hey, we don't want to just use the software for positioning. We also want to use your solar panels for power. We want to use the satellite radios for communications, the reaction wheels for positioning, the power distribution systems. I mean, this was kind of, this was changing Rocket Lab from being a small launch provider to this end-to-end space company it wanted to be. And this contract value was worth $327 million for a total of 17 satellites and components that were included with them. So this was kind of a big first step, in my opinion, for the business that led to a lot more contracts that got even larger in magnitude. Fast forward a couple of years, to January 2024, then all of a sudden the SDA, the Space Development Agency, comes to Rocket Lab and says, hey, we want 18 of these satellites to be built for a beta program that we're working on right now. They're going to be introduced and integrated for low latency, for military applications, worldwide connectivity to meet Department of Defense needs. And by the way, Rocket Lab, you're going to be a prime contractor for this. You're not going to be a subcontractor. You'll be directly in control of your destiny. And as a prime contractor, the entire contract itself is worth $515 million. The majority of that just straight up front is a base contract negotiation. Really big deal, right? Another order of a couple $100 million larger in this kind of contract. Now we're in 2025, a year later. The Air Force has now got another contract for Rocket Lab for its enterprise-wide agile acquisition contract. Always love the acronyms for these things. That could be worth up to $46 billion in total contract reward. That's not the amount that's been granted or given to Rocket Lab straight up front, but because it likes the capabilities of HASTE, being able to launch within a short window and launch a larger payload than what Electron was originally able to, they're actually kind of giving them the nod to compete and participate in a very, very large government contract with the Air Force. This is great news. This is something that Rocket Lab can go out there and say, hey, we're going to show you that we can get it done out there. Glad to be a part of this Air Force contract. And as we showed before, this is, again, when you see these kinds of numbers, it's not just on the $50 million launch of putting something in outer space using a neutron rocket. It's the hardware, the qualification, the design, the development, the installation, the manufacturing, the integration, and then finally the launch at the end. There's a lot that's involved in these massive contracts that are being done out there. And then the Space Force itself, Neutron has now unlocked some new opportunities for Rocket Lab to compete at an even larger deal out there, right? Rocket Lab's Neutron rocket has been selected by the U.S. Space Force to compete for its National Security Space Launch Phase 3 Lane 1 program. This is a firm fixed price, to compete. This is not granted just yet, but it seems like it's going to have a good chance of getting selected, at least for a portion of this, over a 5-year period that will run through June 2029, with a maximum value for all contracts in this program of $5.6 billion. You can just kind of see the magnitude of these getting larger and larger, from small commercial customers. The early adopters like the idea of what Electron could do, Rocket Lab shows its credibility, quite a few successful launches, putting over 150 satellites into outer space. All of a sudden, the government gets very interested. They want to keep an eye on what China's doing, what Russia's doing. The Defense Department's very interested in hypersonic, not only surveillance, but also capabilities to react to threats against the United States. This kind of unlocked the HASTE program that Rocket Lab's been getting some really big customer wins, especially with the United States government. And okay, great. So I'm going to take just a moment to break at this point. We're going to talk about valuation in a moment. I do want to see if my friend Emmett Savage is here with me. I'm going to drink a cup of coffee. I'm going to grab a glass of water. I'm going to look at the comments that are mentioned here within the live chat. But Emmett, if you are there, would you like to join me on the stage to talk a little bit about a program that we've started here with 7investing, and knowing that we're going to be jumping right into valuation next as the next part of this discussion. Emmett, are you there? Can you hear me? If not, I might be pulling an impromptu. Okay, we'll call a quick audible here. Let's see. I do want to talk a little bit about profit then. I was going to grab a quick drink and let Emmett take the stage from here. I don't know if that's going to be able to do that though. So let's keep rolling with the short intermission. Talk just about a company and a partnership that I'm pretty excited about. Emmett is a good friend of mine. I've known him for several years, and he started a new opportunity in a program to incorporate AI into investing. And he called it Profit, not P-R-O-F-I-T, but P-R-O-P-H-E-T, because it's using AI to take a lot of the fundamental research that was kind of proposed by Clayton Christensen and the Innovator's Dilemma, by Blue Ocean Strategy, all these great academic researchers that kind of went out there and figured out, how do you find great investments if you're looking for ideas in the stock market. It wasn't just AI looking at trading signals or technical analysis, where you would see an arrow pointing up when it was time to buy or an arrow pointing down when it was time to sell. I mean, this was really what I thought investing was meant to be, which is looking long-term, finding great opportunities, but having it based upon fundamental analysis. And so Emmett and the Profit team have done a great job of using AI to identify not only technical signals, but also fundamentals related to great investment opportunities, which are very different than what we're looking at for 7investing. A lot of these are small cap value companies, that are domiciled internationally or outside of the United States. They're not tech companies. They're not Rocket Lab. They're not Magnificent Seven kind of companies, but it's done quite well, right? Proven over the last 16 years, Profit has delivered a 21.6 annual average return. And you can do it by just looking for 5 minutes every month. It's kind of a portfolio that rebalances between the buys and sells each and every month. I really encourage people to take a look at this. You can go to useprofit.com/7investing to get an exclusive offer on this. Not only have they reduced the price from $299 a year, but for our audience to $249 a year, $50 savings. But they're actually giving you 2 months free. At first, we were kind of in negotiation, said, let's get a month free. I said, hey, can you give everybody 2 months free just so everyone can really start using this and take a look at the first kind of 2 rebalances? And they said, yes, we'll accommodate for the 7investing audience. I think this is a slam dunk in my opinion. This is a win-win, not only for people that want to go and talk about stocks and discuss like the opportunities like 7investing is doing, but also how do you figure out finding new ideas with Profit's AI engine, expand our peripheral vision, give us something to talk about in the community forum, give us something to discuss in the public podcast like this, and then also just a great no-risk offer with 2 months free and a $50 discount. So check out useprofit.com/7investing. I'm pretty excited about this. We're going to be talking about it quite a bit. Pretty selective when it comes to choosing the affiliates I want to work with. But again, the relationship that I've got with Profit has me very happy to promote this partnership. So check it out again, use Profit, PROPHET.com/7investing. Okay, moving on. What's the right price to pay for not for 7investing? The right price for 7investing is $17 a month. Excuse me on that. Thank you for saying doing great, Jacob, even though I mistakenly said the wrong company name when I said what it's worth. But what's the right price to buy Rocket Lab for? What's the right price for us to pay as investors? And again, going back in time, not only the early recommendations when Rocket Lab was around $10 a share right out of the gate as a public company, but do you remember when the stock fell it was so volatile. It was down to $4 or $5 a share a couple of years after the SPAC IPO. Felt like nobody in the markets wanted to go out there and buy a growth company. Nobody wanted to invest in the space economy. We were so used to seeing a lot of these companies go bankrupt or really not do right for their investors after raising money with the SPACs. Rocket Lab did completely the opposite. I was out there pounding the table on shares. As recently as last year, March 4th, 2024, 7investing published an article when Rocket Lab was selling at $4 a share. And I said, hey, Rocket Lab stock is worth $22 a share. That's 453% upside. Here's why. You typically will get smacked in the face by a 2x4 in the investing community for making a statement like this, because people will always remember when you're wrong and rarely remember when you're right. And so it really took some risk, going out there and saying, hey, I've done a lot of work on Rocket Lab. I've purchased it myself. I really think it's worth more than $20 a share. And I've got it backed up by a discounted cash flow calculation. Of course, this turned out to be extremely correct. Rocket Lab did have a fantastic year in 2024 and is off to a great start in 2025. But let's look a little bit about what I think the shares are worth here today. Please post your comments in the live stream chat if you have thoughts about Rocket Lab's valuation. Again, as of right now, Rocket Lab's stock is selling at about $22 a share as of May 13th, 2025 at 3:31 p.m. Central Time. It's a $10 billion market cap. I still think it's going to be profitable by 2027. But let's look a little bit about what I built into the valuation then when I said that it's worth $22 a share. How has it actually performed in the years since then? And then where is it going if we wanted to update the valuation itself? Right, so jumping in again, this was not just, a back of the envelope conversation. This was a really deep discounted cash flow valuation model. I have a background in finance. I have a background in as an engineer as well. So it was kind of this perfect combination of kind of the technical side of it and seeing how this story was developing, coupled with, the in-depth financial work in the spreadsheets that were pretty intensive, right? We don't need to go through all this, but just kind of to show you, hey, this was not just a back of the envelope kind of calculation, but let's look at what the inputs were. Let's look at what was assumed last year versus how Rocket Labs actually performed. First, within the launch segment itself, right? I was anticipating 22 launches from Electron in 2024, growing to 52 launches per year by the year 2026. First of all, Rocket Lab had 16 launches in 2024. That was falling short of the expectations that I had, but a lot of that wasn't canceled launches. It was just being moved out. And in fact, it's got a very full schedule here for 2025. So I think that I'm going to give them a check on this one. I think they're actually hitting the expectation that I had for Electron in terms of the launch cadence in this calendar that they've got out there. The second one was Neutron, right? We said back then, I was actually expecting that they were going to have a test launch in 2024. I thought that the development and the R&D work and all the overhead that was required to actually get it to the pad was going to be finished in late 2024. And I was actually anticipating a zero revenue test launch that would cost Rocket Lab $30 million to conduct. They would recognize it as a cost of goods sold. It was just out there to show, hey, we can put Neutron out into outer space, just like what SpaceX does when Elon shoots off one of his Falcon rockets, just to show that it's working. I thought this was going to be a cost for Rocket Lab. Didn't end up happening. And in fact, they're still on schedule to launch their first mission in 2025. The interesting piece on this is, no, we didn't get that test launch in 2024, but it doesn't actually look like they're going to have any test launches in 2025. It looks like it's going to be a fully commercialized, fully funded by customers launch in late 2020 and later in this year. So I'm going to give this kind of a little bit of a smaller check, perhaps. I don't think that it got to the pad as soon as many people was expecting, right? Whether that was late 2024 or spring of 2025. Neutron is still being stated that it's going to get to its first inaugural launch in late 2025, but it seems like it's going to be fully funded by customers rather than being an expense for Rocket Lab itself. And the expectations are still in place, I think, for this being $50 million in revenue per Neutron launch. Still unsure about the cost per launch, but I think it's in the neighborhood of $25 to $30 million, which is going to come down, as you start recognizing the economies of scale over time. And then the gross margin profile is going to improve. just like we saw for Electron, it's going to be very, very small upfront, right? A very small, like single digit percentage gross margin for Neutron in the very first year, but then climbing up to 38% by 2034. The Space Systems Group, this is again the contracts themselves. They've already got a backlog of over $1 billion when you count both launch and space systems. I was expecting that the space system, which is kind of the manufacturing, the creation of the rockets, excuse me, of the satellites themselves and components themselves, I thought that was going to be about a 45% growth for fiscal 2024. Actually came in at 80% growth. A big check mark on this one. That growth was outpacing my own expectations. It seems like the contracts are getting larger, the deals are getting bigger, and Neutron just gonna win even larger contracts, not only for the government but for larger commercial enterprises. So I think this is really good in terms of the valuation itself. Again, we're gonna have to go through and kind of fine tune a lot of these operating expenses. We did see kind of CFO Adam Spice, who I've spoken with personally before, on kind of his CapEx expectations for the coming years. Even from back in 2021 at the time of the initial SPAC through the year 2025 into 2027. He's got some expectations that seem to be still on schedule for what they want to put into the program, not only to develop Neutron and to get it up into orbit, but also the R&D and the team costs and the overhead associated with it too. This is going to be something that I still think is TBD. I want to fine tune this a little bit. I want to sharpen my pencil and look at Rocket Lab's operating expenses again. And I also want to look at the expectations that I have for the discount rate and then also of the cash flows themselves. Because when you're doing a discounted cash flow, you got to assume what is the company's cost of capital? What's the split between equity and debt? Rocket Lab got very fortunate. They were able to fund a lot of their business with equity right up front because of that SPAC IPO, went out there, made some great acquisitions, funded the CapEx with it, didn't require as much financial leverage and a financial debt from traditional lenders as a company who has a lot of CapEx typically requires. Fantastic for the business in terms of the weighted average cost of capital. But again, when I was going back and saying $22 a share, I was kind of assuming a certain discount rate when I was saying that it was worth $22. We're going to sharpen our pencils again and take a look at that. So the next step, going from here, again, we are at 3:37, 40 minutes in for a podcast. I want to be mindful of everyone's time, especially those of you who are attending live, and thank you for this. But I think that in terms of my initial expectations, when I said Rocket Lab was worth what it was, Electron has largely met its initial expectations, a little short in 2024. I think that's catching back up in 2025. Space Systems has exceeded my initial expectations, and Neutron is still to be determined. Next steps, we're going to look back at the operating expenses. We're going to look at these larger contract wins, and we're going to update the discounted rate and the cash flow estimates. But I think most likely, without putting a stake in the ground and coming out and saying $22 a share like I did a year ago, I'm kind of getting the feeling based on the DCF that I have in place right now. I think a good price right now, a fair value for Rocket Lab is right around 25, maybe 27, maybe as high as $30 per share as a reasonable fair value for right now in 2025. And again, the shares are at $22 a share right now. I think that maybe suggesting 20% undervalued, assuming things go well with Neutron, it's still on schedule for the future. So, I want to leave it at that. Again, if you'd like me to send you this presentation, I follow Rocket Lab pretty closely, have for the last 4 years, personally invested in the stock, have recommended it to our 7 investing audience. If you'd like me to send you this presentation, and then also all of my investing insights on the company, 7investing.com/newsletter is the place to do that. You can see kind of, we follow a lot of companies right here. We've got ASML, in the picture that you've got there, a lot of growth style companies. There's really the niche that I like to play in. And Rocket Lab is certainly one of those. So let's see, I'm going to stop sharing. Let me see if I can open it up for anyone who wants to make a comment. Let me catch back up on the live chat. A lot of different comments here about the MDA contract. Yes, thank you very much. Test launch will not be funded by customers. Yes, very true on that. First launch won't have any customer payloads. Great points there. Very good info. Great job so far. Okay, cool. Thank you for all those comments. Let me see if I can open up the comments to anyone who wants to speak. Is there anyone who would like to actually make a comment? Bear with me 2 seconds. I'm going to try to open up the microphone for others to share or be speaking. If I can't figure that out, we can always just address them in the live chat. And apologies, this is a little bit new doing the live stream format. I'm enjoying it, but working out some of the technical kinks. There is a question that's coming in. Any thoughts on Elon Musk and Trump's relationships affecting Rocket Lab? Of course, Yeah, Elon Musk, very, very cozy with Donald Trump. A lot of work that he's done, not only for the Defense Department, but also kind of in, surveillance and a lot of America's military interests. I kind of think for a while, the Falcon and Neutron are going to kind of have separate swim lanes. Oh, here we go. Here we go. We've got an acceptance from a guest that wants to chat about some of these. I do think there's going to be separate swim lanes for Neutron and with Falcon a little bit going forward. Jacob, let me hand it to you. I think that we've given you mic access. Whatever you'd like to say about Rocket Lab, the floor is yours, my friend.
Cool. Hey, can you hear me? You got sound?
Yeah, I cannot hear you. I'm hoping someone else can, but let's see if we can activate your microphone and get that working.
This might be my fault.
All apps that might be using the microphone in another application, perhaps. Oh, Scott says he can hear you even if I cannot, Jacob. So please go ahead. Apologies.
Oh, all right, cool. I took off the headphones, so we'll try this there. Can you hear me yet, Simon? No. All right, cool. Scott can hear me. Anyways, I was just gonna make a comment that there's some big sleeper catalysts. I think not well advertised in the next 6 to 12 months. Another SDA tracking SDA contract for the tracking layer. I think Rocket Lab has a really good shot at winning a large reward for that. They also have whatever Golden Dome is going to be. There's there's a decent pipeline of potential space systems contracts through that. And then I really think there is going to be a commercial supplier for Flatellite, and I don't know. We'll see who that ends up being, but they didn't just design all that without. I mean, they've continually said they did it with industry feedback. So we'll see who that that potential first big commercial customer is going to be. But I think it's going to be another large commercial side contract for that. I'm going to hand it back to you, Simon. I guess you can't hear me, but I'm going to hand it back to you.
Okay, thanks very much, Jacob. Again, thank you for everyone posting in the live chat. Certainly going out on a limb and a risk when you've allowed a speaker to speak and you can't hear anything they're saying. So if you said anything about 7investing, I hope it was nice things, Jacob. I appreciate your input. We'll figure out how in the future to get the voice enabled so I can hear it as well. But it looks like I said, Flatellite customers have already got more than one customer in place. And there was huge catalysts throughout the year in agreeing with the long-term thesis. Yeah, I certainly agree. Jacob, I followed a lot of your coverage on X. And you do a fantastic job following Rocket Lab, as so many other investors do. It seems like there's a lot of excitement around this company for good reason out there. So I think maybe I'll leave it at that, unless anyone wants to add some additional comments into the live stream chat. We will publish this to the 7investing podcast. It's gone out right now to X, Twitter, and to our YouTube channel. I think these are a lot of fun. I think I want to do them again. And, I think the next one we're going to do is going to be on Lemonade, actually, because that was the second highest receiver of votes in the poll that I put up yesterday. Rocket Lab took the cake. We got the win on this being the company to be discussed for this live stream, but certainly a lot of interest in Lemonade. I'll see if I can't get something scheduled for that next week. And stay tuned for the 7investing podcast. Also, tomorrow morning, I'm going to be speaking with PubMatic CEO Rajiv Goel. Rajiv is a fantastic leader in the digital advertising world, long-term relationship with 7investing, kind of an interesting space to be following along. He's going to be our guest for the 7investing podcast tomorrow, and we'll publish that later this week as well. So, hey, cool. Great. Thanks, everybody, for attending the live stream event. I think it's a lot more fun to do interactive. It's not just a one-way publishing, but kind of this back and forth conversation, which I really enjoy. I think that part of my job at 7investing has been to continue this conversation with individual investors. I don't like it that it's the perceived idea that Wall Street knows things that we don't. I think that we have an advantage actually as individual investors. We can invest in anything we want to. We can find companies that are not on their radar or companies that they're purposely avoiding for a variety of reasons. Let's go out there and take advantage of those things that are working in our favor and find the opportunities for the companies that are priced at $4 a share and are really worth $22 a share like Rocket Lab was. So, hey, I appreciate you tuning in. Again, join our email list, 7investing.com/newsletter. If you'd like this presentation to be sent to you, I appreciate you tuning in live, and we'll see you next week. Until then, we are here to empower you to invest in your future. We are 7investing. Have a great week, everyone.